All right, so what I'm going to do is talk about island biogeography now, and it's something we will also talk about in the Zoom. But I wanted to have some slides for you to look at, so I'm going to go over it fairly quick here, and then we'll do kind of a revamp in class. But the idea behind island biogeography, these are the two people that came up with it, MacArthur and Wilson. So Robert MacArthur was an ecologist and a mathematician. He was one of the first ones to actually use statistics, looking at life histories and things in ecology. Professor of biology at Princeton. And he talked about niche partitioning, which a niche is kind of the role an organism plays in the environment, and how through competition, organisms decide what they're doing. And then optimal foraging strategy is if you are a predator, what is your best strategy to getting food? So these are some of the concepts he came up with. And then E.O. Wilson is also an ecologist, professor, a retired professor now at Harvard. And he is the world ant specialist, wrote a controversial book on sociobiology, and is considered to be the father of biodiversity. And anyway, so they came up with this idea, and you can see it down here in the picture, island biogeography. They went to the archipelagos and they were studying birds, and they were trying to make out how you can figure out what birds are on what islands and why. And they came up with this idea, and it's not rocket science, but the pictures actually show it. And so you might want to spend a little bit of time looking at those. And so here's what I want. And this is really, really a lot of words, and I'm not going to read it to you. But what I want you to realize is what they decided is pretty simple, if you think about it. Now, they picked islands because very limited in numbers. You're not dealing with a continent where you have all these species. And again, they did birds. And the idea was larger islands had more birds on it than smaller islands. Makes sense, because you have more habitats. The second thing is the more isolated the island was, the less species it had on it, because it was hard for species to get there. So there's this kind of a equilibrium on immigration and emigration. And again, the farther away it is, it made it hard for species to actually get there. Okay, so large islands have more species than small islands. Close islands, close to a mainland or a potential source, had more species than far away islands. And then the other thing that doesn't really talk about here, it comes down to this equilibrium they hit. And so what they would do is go to an island, you might see 6 species of birds, okay? You go back 20 years, you see 6 species of birds. But they may not be the same species. One may have gone extinct, another might have immigrated out. So it tells you that the carrying capacity of that island is 6 species of birds. So that's kind of the idea behind this. Costa Rica went into this idea and started making these big, huge reserves. And the idea was, we are going to make national park land. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have buffer zones around that to protect it. And so they did a very good job doing that. And they're restoring areas. And again, they're just making a ton of money. And that really is what it comes down to, is they are using this as ecotourism. And they found out that they can make a lot more money with people coming and visiting versus chopping it down. You chop down a forest, what you end up with is you sell the lumber, you might raise cattle for 5-6 years, and then you ended up with degraded land that is very limited resources after that. And they've decided that that's not the way to go long term. And again, we're looking for biodiversity hotspots, and that's always a good. When you're making a reserve, you want to put it right on top of a hotspot. And so here in Southern California, we are a hotspot, and that is coastal sage-grouse, one of the more endangered terrestrial habitats. And so you can see hotspots. And again, these areas only cover about 2% of their surface. But this is where all the flowering plants are. This is where all the terrestrial vertebrates are. and only 5% of this is protected. So again, there's tropical rainforest, there's coastal statecraft, there's different communities that are extremely rare, and we need to quickly start changing our attitudes and trying to save these hot spots for sure. I thought I corrected that, but activities, not actives. And so what I do want you to know also is human activities are threatening aquatic biodiversity. And so what that means is that we are not just losing terrestrial habitats, which we are, but it's also hurting the aquatic diversity. Coastal habitats are disappearing 2 to 10 times faster than tropical rainforest. Everybody wants to live at the beach. And then the way we actually farm is causing major damage when I mean aquatic farming. And so you can see that habitat disruption, another major problem. This is a very lionfish, very cool fish, except for it's invasive. Nothing actually goes after it, so it's actually been introduced. And introduction is responsible for about 2/3 of all U.S. fish extinctions. And so definitely having a major impact. So again, overfishing is a huge problem. And not only that, but the methods that we fish, you can see in the picture on the right, we have we're overfishing 87% of the world's commercial fisheries. We're fully exploiting or overfish. 98% of it doesn't really have any protection because, again, it's kind of that tragedy of the commons. And who's going to stop it? And so I did include, if you are a fish eater or sushi eater, I have included a couple of cards from World Watch. I forget the exact name of it, but they tell you what is better fish to eat that is more sustainable. And then just to get to the end here, E.O. Wilson, priorities for an ecosystem approach to aquatic biodiversity. Again, it's kind of covers the same thing as on terrestrial. We need to have large areas that are reserved. We need to do global projects. And we have to make sure we reduce poverty so people have a form of life so they don't have to degrade the systems that are there. These are some of the important factors.